Great. Can you all hear me? Hey, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey to fight food waste at a global scale. And I was asked specifically, we want to hear about three decisions only and nothing else. I took it very literal. So I'm only going to share the first three big decisions we took, and the rest you'll have to hear another day. But basically, after I joined, we made a game plan because we had to make some changes. We had a concept that was really strong. We could see that it was a proven concept. Our businesses love it, our consumers love it, but we needed to figure out how to scale it. So first decision was that we needed to focus on fewer markets. At this point, we were live in 10 markets, 10 different countries. And I'll get back to why that's not a good idea when you're 6 months into your product launch. The second thing was we changed our ownership model. And then the third thing is that we really work a lot on our culture. And that's not something you fix in a quarter. That's an ongoing thing, and it actually gets more and more important. So first, about the fewer markets. This was the status around early 2007. So all the DACH countries here we had an office in, and the other countries were live, but without an office. And it's pretty crazy for an app that's been live for a year. And with a partnership model where you have to go out and get both the businesses and the consumers on board at the same time, and you have to find out how you are going to balance your supply and the demand, because you don't want one of them to run away from the other. You have to constantly balance it. And it was just really clear that we did not have, the processes, the tools, or the people to really do all of these 10 countries right. In fact, we were making the same mistake 10 times because no one had the recipe, no one had the playbook yet. So my first decision was to close 4 of these down. Not a popular one, but a very, very necessary one. And I think maybe the best decision we ever made, the second best. The best comes after. But the second best was to really cut it and focus. And so we ended up focusing on mainly Denmark as our home market, but then the 3 big ones, so UK, France, and Germany. So in Switzerland, we didn't even have a team, but we had so much cooking there that we didn't want to close it down, so we just kept it as it was. And then we handled customer support out of Germany and France for a while. Not ideal, but we managed. And then we could really double down on the investments in the other countries. And focus on building the foundation that we needed to then add more and more countries. So for all of 2017, we didn't launch a single new country. And people on my team, they joked that I had only ever closed countries. So when it came time to open one, I was a little bit new in the game. But in 2018, we've then added Netherlands, Belgium, and Spain, and then we put a team in place in Switzerland finally. And we're not going to open any more this year. So these are 4 new focus markets. They're not focus markets, but 4 new markets that we are then going to handle alongside everything else we're doing. That was the first thing, focus. Second thing was about the ownership model. And the setup initially was that we had 5 Danish founders who started out in Denmark and owned the Danish market, but then for all other markets, we basically had this partnership model. So what happened quite quickly was entrepreneurs from across Europe heard about the concept, and everyone loved it, and they sent emails saying, hey, can I run with this in Norway, or can I be your person in France, and then I'll own the right to, the exclusive right to run with this in my country. And I think the standard answer to any of those questions was always just, yes, sure you can. Just go ahead and have fun. And I think that model is, there are many examples, especially within food, where it's a very, very good model. But only, I think, if you have at least these things in place, and probably more. But in our case, at least, I think you need to have a really established brand to go with this partnership or franchise model. You need to have experience with what works. You need a really solid playbook. You need to have the processes and the tools and really, really, really understand your model. And then you also need to have quite significant funding for each market. And because it's a marketplace and you're playing on two fronts, it's not going to be free. It needs significant investment up front. And typically in the market, when you have a contract with the headquarter, and the way that contract is normally structured, it's not very appealing to a local investor. So our markets basically were not able to find any investors, because who would invest in something where we could pull the plug almost any time? So it was just like, we didn't have any of these things, definitely not the established brand either. None of that really was in place. So it was really, really not an optimal setup for anyone. So what we did was that we went in and we looked at all of these countries, and then we changed the model. So Denmark was fixed already, but we said our most strategic markets in Europe are France, UK, and Germany. We have to own those markets ourselves. We can't rely on great people, definitely, but great people without money is not that great. so we couldn't rely on that. So we basically went to our French team and to our team in the UK and said, how about we team up instead? You know, instead of us having both optimizing in silos here, how about we make this one team? So we basically bought back these countries, and we made the teams part of the global project. So they're co-owners like a lot of us at this point. And then we're really one big team. The only country we didn't do this in was Norway, because we had so much traction there already that the business was actually profitable, and we thought it's a small country, and this for us is a little bit of our partnership sandbox. So this is where we now experiment with that model, because I think it could be a model that will work longer term, but it wasn't a big priority to fix it in Norway, where we have a really, really strong culture. So that's the second big decision we made, is to really make this one team and then make sure we can invest as much as is needed with the model we have. Then the last thing is then an ongoing thing. And building this culture fit to grow is something that in my last company we didn't really have to work very hard on. I mean, we were, I think at peak, we were maybe 45 people. It's not that difficult. Here we went from, when I joined it originally as an investor, 25, 30 people, to now almost 200 in a pretty short period of time. And it's really hard to keep that culture strong when everyone just came in. Everyone just came in. I mean, every Monday, and especially the first in the month, you have a whole batch of people. I just welcomed 35 people today, actually, that were hired over the past 2 months. But when you grow that fast, it's really, really important that you get the culture right. And here we work with, especially with 3 things. So it's purpose, it's people, and it's performance. So I want to talk about each of these in turn. So purpose is really all about why we're here. And food waste is a really massive issue. For those who don't know, 1/3 of all food produced in this world is wasted. It's lost or wasted. It never makes it to human consumption. And it's crazy. So, and we look at this from there are at least 3 different aspects. So the environmental aspect is that 8% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from food waste. Not from food, but from the food wasted. I mean, that in itself is just crazy. When you look at the social aspect, you know, we produce more than enough food for everyone in this world, and yet 870 million people go to bed hungry every single night. And then the economic aspect is that all this food waste is actually worth $1.2 trillion. That's the equivalent to the GDP for Denmark, Norway, and Sweden combined. So in addition to this being just shameful, it's also a big opportunity. But we really have the purpose of fixing this. And that's the number one thing we look for in our people. You know, you need to be driven by this purpose. If you don't think this is outrageous, if you don't want to fix it, there's no seat for you at our table. The mission is to inspire and empower everyone to take action against food waste. And this really is because we don't think of this as just a marketplace. I mean, we could easily settle for having supply, having demand, having a good ratio between them and grow in new countries, but we want to do more than that. We want to start a movement, and that's the inspire part. We want people to change their habits at home. Just think about it before you drop the next banana in the bin, and we want people to change their habits in their businesses. So this is more than just a company. Definitely, we are for profit. We don't have a profit, but we're for profit. And we plan on having a profit eventually, and we can see the model working, but we want to have that profit because we can then have a bigger impact. And it's important that our people think that's important. And then when we hire, we are really, really cautious about who we hire, and we know what we're looking for. So it's actually our team that has defined what is a good waste warrior. So what we look for is someone who's passionate. We talked about that. You need to be driven by this need to change things that are just crazy today. We're looking for people who are resourceful, people who convert chaos into energy, who love speed, and who will just take any task and say, I got this. That's the kind of people we're looking for. And we need to move super fast, so we don't have time for a ton of questions. You just go and you do it. Then we're looking for creative people who try to go beyond the obvious. And fourth here is we're looking for people who are growth-minded, people who understand that everyone can always improve and get better at pretty much everything they do. And so we help each other, we give feedback, we constantly challenge each other to set the bar higher. And that kind of culture is not for everyone, because this also goes both ways. I got feedback today from someone I never heard of, but I got it on Slack. I asked for feedback, I got it, and the only thing you can say is thank you. I'm really happy you share that with me, and I'm going to change a few things now. But that kind of mindset is not for everyone, but we want to have that. And then the last thing is, and I think one of the great things about running a company is you get to decide who you want to work with. And we don't want to work with assholes. And we have the power to decide we don't hire assholes. So if someone doesn't, if you have an interview and you don't want to have a beer or a cup of coffee with that person, then it's very easy. That person will not get hired. Because, we need to actually like each other to be able to build the kind of trust you need to grow really, really fast. Last thing on culture is about performance. So here, our philosophy is, because we are we have a get big fast strategy, our philosophy really is that you need to provide the direction and then get the hell out of the way. Coming from a sports company, we had a lot of sports metaphors, but my own metaphor for this is, you give people a lane and you don't have a max speed. Let them set the speed. There's definitely a lower speed that's allowed, but there's no max speed, and you don't put barriers in all the time. Just make sure the lane is clear for people to really, really run in it. The second thing is that we try to make all processes scalable and efficient, and at the same time empower our team. And that's actually one of the trickiest things right now, is that constant balance between central and decentral. We want to empower, but we also know that when we find out what works best, we don't want 9 countries doing it the old way, because we just learned something here. So that balance is one of the things we work with a lot. And then the other balance we work with is this balance between saving the world and winning, because our people are so passionate that sometimes they forget that we also have a commercial business to run here. And we have to constantly work on that balance, and it's super important that people understand that if we don't make the commercial side work, there's no money for the idealism. So we need to find the right balance between the two and really succeed with both of them. I think that's everything I'm allowed to say. Thank you.